Hey everyone, just want to let you know that these episodes have been recorded out of order. This was the first one I ever recorded, but it's not the first one to air. Obviously, this is the third episode to air of Wild Calling Wednesdays, but I'm very lucky to be able to sit down with my good buddy Josh Teulker for this episode. I really hope you guys enjoy it. Josh has some great stories, and he's got some great content over on Before the Echo. Make sure you guys go check that out on any podcast platform you listen to or YouTube. So welcome everyone to Wild Calling Wednesdays. This is the first podcast I'll be doing in this series. And the point of this series is to try and capture the best wild stories that you have in the outdoors. We're going to have guests on of all different origin and a lot of guys that are particularly whitetail hunters because that's most of our audience. But we're going to hear those stories that they don't get to tell very often and just see about all the crazy experiences they have. I've talked to a lot of different people in the hunting industry, and I've known quite a few people that have had some really great stories, but they never get to share them with the public because they're so oriented towards preaching tactics and skills, and they talk about their kills and everything like that. But there's plenty of, as you heard earlier, near-death experiences that I've had that were really interesting for people to listen to. So this podcast is going to be all about those wild, wild stories that you experience on the way to a kill or somewhere in the outdoors. And with that theme, this being my first podcast that I'm hosting, I have the host of the first podcast I was ever on, Josh Teulker. Josh, go ahead and say hi to everyone.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
That's Josh's telltale sign on right there. Hey, everybody. But Josh is from Indiana, and he is a killer. He has gone all around the U.S. He's done elk hunts. He's killed multiple deer the past, 3-4 seasons straight? You've killed multiple bucks?
Yeah, I killed 4 last year and 3 this year. Yep.
Yeah. So Josh is around getting a lot of time in the woods, and he's got his own podcast Before the Echo. We'll talk about that later too. But Josh is certainly one that would have a lot of great stories to talk about, and a guy that I always enjoy talking to in general. So, Josh, I heard that you've got some crazy stories that might be kind of coyote oriented.
Yeah. So my family are big coyote hunters. I don't coyote hunt anymore. But my dad and my uncles do, and I did it for a couple years with them, and racked up some stories when it comes to coyote hunting. We have the family has English foxhounds, and we run the coyotes with English foxhounds, and then we'd shoot them with like 4-buck or something like that, like shotguns.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, it's just like a rabbit hunting. They run a coyote in a circle, and you shoot them with a shotgun, but it gets a little Western when you're doing that with these English foxhounds. The first story, if I'm okay to go ahead and start.
Go for it, man.
The stories. Yeah. So we were running a coyote, and there was an excavator working in the middle of this crop field, putting in like tile or I don't know, drainage or something. I'm not sure. Can't remember exactly what they were doing. And the coyote went running across this field. And of course, none of us seen this. This was all happening, outside of everybody's view. And the farmer was just out there with the excavator working. And all of a sudden, on the Garmin trackers, all the dogs were bayed in the middle of the field. And bayed means they're all in one spot barking. Essentially, you're like treed. You'd hear in coon hunting, you'd hear someone say that the dogs are treed. They're all in one spot barking up a tree. Well, in coyote hunting, you bay them because they're all, the coyote went in a hole or in a brush pile or something like that. So anyway, my uncle, he starts walking toward where the dogs are, and he looks up, and they're all around this excavator. And he's like, "What the heck, all these freaking dogs around this excavator, and the farmer's out there working it." And my uncle's walking over to the farmer, and the farmer has the bucket up in the air, and he gets up to it, and the farmer's pointing up like this, and he's like, "What the heck, okay?" And I guess the farmer said, "Hey, that coyote ran into my bucket, and I picked it up." and that farmer had that coyote up in the bucket of his excavator, and it was sitting up there, and all the dogs had treated essentially on top of the excavator.
Oh my God.
And sure enough, they got the dogs back, and the farmer let the bucket down, and the coyote was in there, and of course he killed it. But
that's wild.
It's insane. It's almost not believable. But
yeah, it seems like those are the things that, like, I don't know. Those are the stories that you almost had to be there to believe that he has it
I know.
up in a bucket in the sky too. But there's been so many crazy things. I mean, even talking to my good buddy Wyatt Barber, like, I mean, he's just conventional sitting with calls and stuff for Coyotes, but
Yeah.
man, he's got so many crazy stories, and
Yeah.
I've
Crazy things happen at
had
night
him
too.
track me out a couple times. Kind of usually it's after I get one when I'm dragging it through, and it's sometime during the rut where you're dragging a tarsal gland or you're shoot a doe during the rut or something like that, and you're dragging an estrus. I've had them get kind of yippy and closer. I've never gotten to the
Yeah.
point where I actually see them on my tail, but I can hear them running through and deciding what to do.
Yeah.
But
I haven't had too many bad experiences with them, like deer hunting, but I've heard a lot of stories of people having problems with them deer hunting,
yeah,
or at least close calls.
I've had some problems with wolves in the Northwoods. I've had we go up to the Nicolet-Chaquamegon National Forest and gun hunt most of the time. Usually we go around there. Sometimes we'll stick around here and I'll do drives with Dan. But when I was really young, it was one of the first years that I was going off hunting on my own. I think I was like 13 or something like that. And me and my brother were walking down this logging road that was just in a probably 4-year-old clear cut. And we were getting way up into these ponderosa pines. Josh, I think you might have heard this story actually, but we were getting extremely high up. Basically, we got to the point where we had to adjust our climber midway up tighter so that we could get all the way to the top and still have a level platform or somewhat level platform. And our parents would, my dad dropped me off at the beginning of this logging road, and I would head down. My brother's spot was about 200 yards further down, and I could see his headlamp walking the whole way. So I get to the base of my tree and I start climbing up in this tree. I tighten up my climber midway up and I get all the way to the top and I get everything situated. I get my stand locked up. I strap everything on. I get my harness attached to the top. I hang up my gun, and then right as I turn around, a branch knocked off my headlamp. And I have this battery pack headlamp because I was terrified of the dark, and it was super bright and it was snowy on the ground, and it just lit up the entire hill behind my tree. So it's basically 3 feet in front of my tree, just facing. It's probably about 3 yards in front of my tree, just facing my tree and lighting up the whole hill behind me. And I'm like, all right, I can't just let that die out or something. I can't let it sit down. I got to go back down. So I start making my way back down. I of course have to loosen up the climber again, and then get it further down. So I finally get down to the bottom, and I don't have gloves on, and I just left my gun at the top because I was like, screw it, I'll be right back up anyways. And my hands were just freezing. So I get to the base of the tree where I'm about to hop off, and I just sit there for a second. I have a muff on, and I start warming my hands up in that muff, and I hear like like right behind me, really slow. And I'm like, I was really puzzled. I was like, Joe? I thought it was my brother still standing behind me. I was like, what is he doing? I'm like, Joe? And I turn around and I look up the logging trail and I can see my brother getting up in his tree with his headlamp on. I'm like, oh God, that's not Joe. And it's just didn't move at all. It was maybe 15 yards from me. And so I was like, leave. I was like, get out of here. I like started yelling at it. I didn't know what it was because there's bears and stuff up there, and I was freaking out. And so it just wasn't moving. And so I yelled some more, and finally it started walking really slowly off. And right about the time I couldn't hear it, I like ran out of my tree stand, like grabbed my headlamp, shined back there. I saw like a pair of eyes further off, and it was like pretty low, so I thought it was like a fawn, but I was part of me being a little kid was like, oh yeah, that's a wolf. And then I turned back
Yeah.
around and faced my tree, and there's like 6 other sets of eyes like behind my tree on that hillside now, and it was like a pack just like, what the hell is this light? What is this crazy kid doing running up and
Yeah.
down the tree? And I
That's
raced back
spooky.
in the tree, and I've never got up a tree so fast in my life. I just scraped up that pine. Oh God, I was terrified. But we've had a lot of different wolf encounters up there, and it's
Yeah.
very very rare to see them in person. But you usually come across a kill or fresh scat or tracks or something like that, and it's just it's a different animal entirely, man. Their
Yeah.
howl can make your blood turn cold. That's for sure.
Yep. I got a gun pulled on me coyote hunting too. That was
Wow.
horrible. We there's when you're hunting with dogs, I mean, sometimes the dogs will get on a deer or something, especially pups, and go places they're not supposed to be, and of course, we have trackers on them, and one of the dogs was off, ran a deer or something. A pup ran a deer and was off somewhere it wasn't supposed to be, and I went to find it, and it was in this guy's front yard, and he was mad. When I got out there, he was already out on the road. And this is not in the town or anything; just out here in the country. And he had a handgun. He's like pointing at me. He's like, "Get your dogs off my property!" Blah 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 blah. And the bad part is like they weren't. Whenever I got there, they weren't on his property. They were across the road in a field we could be on. And he was across. He was in his front yard pointing at me. I just like started yelling at him. I was like, "Get that gun out of my face!" I said, "Dog tracks in your yard ain't no reason to shoot someone over." And yeah, it was a mess. It got me it shook me up a little bit. But he's also like an ex. Come to find out, he's like an ex-cop that got fired or something. And ooh. I don't know. He probably wasn't the best example of a police officer. But
yeah, that's scary, man. I've never had a gun pointed at me in a threat.
Yeah, it was whatever. My adrenaline was rushing at the time, and I didn't think of it until after, I started shook me up more afterwards than during the whole, incident. But I quit hunting after that. I was like, this isn't for me. It's too wild for me, man.
Yeah, I would not want to tolerate that. I mean, you always think, like, as a guy who's like wrestled and stuff, that if someone like threatens you, you're just gonna like handle it, right? But as an outdoorsman who knows how easy it is for anyone to have a gun on them, it's kind of terrifying. I mean, like, you could be practicing combat your entire life, and it takes literally any person with a gun to kind of shuttle that practice down. I mean, even an Oklahoma State wrestler, Sammy Sasso, now I don't know all the bits of this story, but he got shot twice in the gut. This guy was going to be an NCAA champ most likely this year, and he got pulled over. He got stopped while he was in his car, and these two young kids were like threatening to take his car, and he's like a national champ. I mean, he's in contention for a national champion, a Division I wrestler. So like, he was like, "No, like, you're not taking my car." And so basically, just because he said no, they shot him in the gut twice. And like,
jeez.
Yeah, and so he that put the kibosh a little bit on his wrestling, unfortunately. But luckily, he's alive. But you just never know with someone like that, if they're crazy enough to pull a gun on you. Like, what are the odds they're not going to do anything with it?
Right. Yeah, they always say if you're going to pull a gun and point at someone, you better be willing to shoot them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonder that we have so much happen in the outdoors where everyone's armed, everyone's already pissed off about everything, it seems like. I mean, all you really hear about in the news is negative things, because that's abnormal. Like, that's why it's news. It's because it's irregular. So I guess we see a lot more negative than we do positive, even though that's not probably an accurate assessment of what's really going on. But there's so many people that are like, you can't hunt this way, and you can't kill that deer. This is my deer, all that stuff like that. And all these people are carrying very high-powered weapons. It's a wonder that we don't have some kind of retaliation happen on a yearly basis. But I guess that's also a bit of a testament to what the hunting industry is really like, and what I guess hunters in general, the community, is really like. Not really.
Yeah.
These savages with weapons like the movies want to tote us out to be.
I think generally most people are good, right? I mean, you had to have a special darkness in your heart to shoot someone over anything related to deer hunting. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any other crazy stories that pertain to your Yodi hunting, or just anything you've kind of seen out in the woods? I mean,
not coyote hunting really. I mean, I only did that for a couple of years, but the one time we were in Colorado, the very first. Well, I tell two stories about Colorado. Well, in like 2016, I believe, I went out there for the first time and elk hunting, and I got in really good shape, probably the best shape of my life. And a buddy of mine was going to go with me. He was just going to go and tag along. He didn't buy a tag or anything, and he got in pretty good shape too. We both trained a little bit together, but I was significantly better shape than he was, and we got started up the trail, and it was a long. I mean, a few miles back, maybe 4 miles. I can't remember now, but um, he was. We got going. He's like, man, I don't know if I can do this. He was like, I think maybe I may go back and get a hotel room or something while you hunt, because I'm like, yeah, I'm staying here. Like we drove all the way out here. I'm hunting. Like we're not going home. You do what you want. And he's like, well, let's stop and get a couple miles in. We'll stop and sleep tonight and let me rest, and then I can make it the rest of the way. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Um, and we, of course, we're kind of like, this is the first time out in the wilderness like that, where there's bears, there's, at the time there wasn't wolves, but there's mountain lions and everything else. So, we'd already seen a bear, and it's just black bears. It's not like they're grizzly bears running around, but we're sleeping in separate tents, right? We got like backpacking tents. So we set these backpacking tents up. We're getting some sleep, trying to sleep, and we kind of psyched ourselves out, like talking about like, man, what would you do if a bear came in like right now, or sitting around the fire just being stupid. And that night we're sleeping, and my buddy, I'm in my tent, and all of a sudden I hear something walking around outside my tent. I'm like, what the heck's that? And the first thing I'm thinking, like, oh, there's a bear out here. Sure enough, there's a bear out here, and I'm like, Chris. His name's Chris. I'm like, Chris. There's something walking around the outside of the tent. Well, come to find out, he was like half asleep. He got up to pee, and it was him walking around the outside of the tent. And he was like, he didn't think about that, and he was like, "Oh crap!" He goes on, like he's thinking, "I'm out here." He freaks out, and then he starts running around, and we were just like a huge mess for like a few seconds trying to figure out what was going on, and then we realized like it was just him outside. He was scared of his own footsteps. I was scared of his footsteps, and anyways, we had a freaking awesome hunt up there in Colorado. I ended up shooting one, didn't find it, but we ended up getting in there like probably farther than we should have been, where we could have like came in from the other road and been closer, Mm-hmm. And I came back the following year with just an elk tag, and both years I would go set up on this top. It was like we were like 10,500 feet to where it was, and there was like a plateau on top. And there's some water holes and just some meadows. This is a beautiful area. And these big mule deer would come out on this little point that comes out of the mountain. Like the mountains came out into this plateau. And like every evening I would see mule deer come out right on this point. I'm like, frick, dude, if I ever get a mule deer tag here, I'm going to go sit right there and shoot one of these mule deer. And it took the unit we were in, it took a few points to get the mule deer tag. So few years later, I get the tag, and I'm like all about it. I'm like, dude, I can't wait to get set on that point this evening. I'm going to shoot a big mule deer right off the bat. Like, been scouting it for 3 years, elk hunting, So this point comes out. You can imagine a point that comes out into the plateau. And then on the end of the point, there's like a water hole, and there's a couple pine trees. So I'm sitting in one of these pine trees, just waiting. I'm like, they're going to come right here. And all of a sudden I hear someone go like that. I'm like, what the heck? And dude, I'm freaking far back into the mountains. And I look over, and there's a guy just standing like in the middle of the prairie, like waving at me. I'm like, what the heck? I've never seen anybody up here. The several, I've hunted there several years now at this point. And I'm like, all right. So I walk over to the guy, and it's an Amish guy, like full blown Amish. And I was shooting a longbow, and I had a longbow, and he was just like, you know how they have that Dutch accent, like, oh, you're gonna shoot something with that longbow, And I'm like, well, I'm gonna try, And he just was mesmerized by it, and then he goes, well, me and my 5 other brothers are up here hunting. We've been up here all week. And I'm like, gosh, dang it. They'd all been elk hunting, and they'd blown the place up. But yeah, it was crazy. They're from Ohio, and they had came farther than me elk hunting. There was 5 of them that walked up there. But
oh my gosh, it's crazy how many times you go out west too, and you just see people from the Midwest. Like,
yeah,
there's like, I don't know what it is about Wisconsin, but everyone's just like itching to go to Florida or Colorado once they live in Wisconsin. And so every time I do an out west trip, it's like count the Wisconsin plates. And
Yep.
I've met people up there that like when you get to a remote place and you're going like fly fishing and stuff, they'll get pissed that they see a Wisconsin plate in the lot. They're like, "You Wisconsinites, you're always trying to get out here." And
Oh yeah.
oh, it's crazy. I heard that if I recall right, I think you had a story about something being in a pack that shouldn't have been in a pack
Oh yeah. That's the
along the
same. That's
lines
the
of
same
training.
trip. Well, no, that was the first trip. The first trip that we freaked each other out with the bears walking around. But so yeah, we had, of course, I'd bought Nick a Faru pack, like a real nice. It was called a Mountain Warrior. I don't know if they even make it anymore, but and my buddy just bought like a Cabela's frame pack, and it had those stupid packs have like 47 pockets in them. Like there's pockets everywhere on that stupid pack. And what we would do to train is like we would put, I had a sandbag, a 50-pound sandbag I'd put in that pack, and then we would hike it here in southern Indiana in the hills. Well, my buddy, starting off, he would just put in like, those cheap plastic weights that have sand in them.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
Well, he had some of those in his pack. That's what he would use instead of a sandbag. And oh, whatever. That's a fine idea. Whatever you want to do. Well, like I was telling you, he was really struggling that first night, and we had to stop. And so we stopped and we camped. And we had the bear incident, and then the next day we walked the next 2 miles and got up to the top of the mountain where we wanted to hunt, not too far from where these Amish guys ended up being 5 years later, or however long it was later. We get up to the top of the mountain, and we're unpacking our stuff, putting tents up, and he gets to the bottom of his pack, and he had left like a 10-pound plate in the bottom of his pack, and he carried that sucker all the way up there.
Oh my gosh! Did he carry it back down?
I gave him so much. I'm like, Nirma, are you gonna work out while you're up here? Like, I'll be honest with you. I think he ended up burning it or something.
Oh my
I don't know what he did with it, but yeah, he carried a 10-pound plastic weight up to the top of the mountain in Colorado.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, that was super amateur stuff that back then, man. We didn't know what we were doing.
Oh, dude, it's like that when you go out west for the first time. I remember when I was 18, I did my first like trip out west, and just ever since then, every summer except for last summer, because I was trying to save vacation to go deer hunting out of state, I had made a 9-day total, probably 7 nights in the mountains, backcountry camping and fishing trip. And
Yeah.
I remember the first time we did it with 3 people. And ironically, the last time it was like me, one of my best friends at the time, and my current best friend Cam Madursky, and our buddy Michael was always so like I had all the gear. This is the way it usually goes for like ice fishing or
Yeah.
these out west trips. Like I have the gear. A lot of it is my dad's, and then stuff I've acquired and bought and whatnot. And then I give it to them, and that they use it. And that's the stuff that we have for the trip. That way, if something goes wrong, I'm the one who's at fault, or if something's missing, it's because I didn't bring it or something like that. But I also like it because like I know that they can't bring something that's completely unfit for the trip. So they like to harass me about it, as all good friends should, And so what we did is we bought all this mountain house, and we bought, like what do we need as far as like Cliff Bars and peanut butter for a day of snacks, and then food, and like we're trying to plan out like the lightest weight that cheap high school, college age kids can afford, and the answer is not very light. Like everything is heavy,
Right.
And one of my bags was like a really old frame pack, no idea what brand it even was. One was like an Alps bag that was pretty good, that was a good frame pack, and the other one was a Mojo decoy duck bag with absolutely no back support,
Nice.
no like waist strap, absolutely nothing, and it was just crap. And so that's the one we all took turns rotating bags, because like each of one was like so much more uncomfortable than the other, and one of them couldn't hold much weight because they had like no space, and the other one was super comfortable but you could hold a lot of weight. And so we're portioning out these bags, and we got the scale down in the basement, we're laying out all the food and equipment we got, and every time we packed this up, like it was me and Cam packing them up, and Bergie would come over after he was done with work, Michael, and he just hated how heavy his pack was, and he hated how heavy like they were, and he's like, could we get rid of this, could we get rid of that? And so we'd refine it and stuff. We'd try to pack it in a nicer way so the heavy weight's close to your back and all that stuff, but it just wasn't nice. And so finally me and Cam were like, screw it. And we packed all the stuff together and we put like a 10-pound bowling ball in his bag. And and we're like, he's just gonna hate this. And he came home and came over and tried them on, and we're like so ready for him to reject it. And it was the only time that he was okay with the weight of the bag. He was like, no, this one's
Oh my
fine. Like
gosh.
it's not that bad. We're like, dude, we literally put a bowling ball in it. Like, oh, it's so funny. But
That
yeah,
is
I mean,
funny.
I love those guys to death. I don't talk to Bergie much anymore, Michael, but he's actually moved out west to Montana, and he's making all sorts of crazy stories out there now. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, that's something that Caitlin really wants to do with me at some point. But with the price of moving, it's it's getting jacked up every day.
Yep.
But
Yep.
how many trips have
I
you done out west for elk?
You mean like
Yeah, how many times
like
have you like
Western
gone out and
hunting?
hunted?
I've been to Nebraska a bunch, but that don't really count.
Yeah,
Um, I think I've been 4 times.
that's cool. And
Yeah.
you've gotten an elk, right?
I've shot 2.
Nice. But
Yeah. I didn't find either one of them.
I knew there was
Yeah.
some kind of
I
catch.
know, dude. That first year I shot one, didn't find. I hit it in the shoulder, and the second one, I it was just a cow, but I shot up in the back straps or something, man.
Yeah.
So it's on my me and Andy May were talking about elk hunting the other day, and it's tough at this time in our life because it's such a time commitment. Like, you can't just go elk hunting for a few days, you got to be out there for 10 days ideally, and just not
Yeah.
a great thing to do whenever you got 2 kids at home and all that. It's hard to stamp out that much time.
Yeah,
But
it's got to be pretty
and
tough from
the
Andy's
last
perspective too. I mean, Andy trying to take vacation for that. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's one of those deals where I don't know. And that last time I went was when the Amish guys were all up there, and I was out there solo by myself. I was like real excited about it, and it kind of took the sales out of my win. Like, it just like,
oh,
kind of one of those deals where I thought it was going to be some epic by myself hunt, and then it ended up being me and a bunch of Amish guys. But
yeah. Me and
it's all right.
Rendell were talking about trying to find a way to get out west. We were real close to just on a whim kind of getting tags, but I've been talking to Jeremy Gillespie a lot about how you can get a tag fairly quickly in Montana, even though it's a draw state and stuff. And so I don't know, I might try to plan something like that for a couple of years down the line. I've told myself I'd be out west by like I'd be having an elk tag in my pocket by September this year, but then life kind of hits you and you realize you don't
Yeah.
always have the time and money that you need. But at the same time, like, I'll be down the road here sometime in the near future, and I'll have, I'll be married and I'll have kids and stuff like that, and then I really won't have any time. So it's
Right.
I got to make a priority to do that. But if you ever want to try and get out there, and I can write it off as, hey, a group is going, that would give me a better excuse to be out there
There
rather
you
than
go.
be the solo idiot I am out west and trying to figure it out.
I want to go blacktail hunting in Oregon. I got a buddy out there that I'm going to hook up with and do that. So
Yeah.
that'll probably be my next maybe out west hunt. I don't know. We'll see.
Blacktail.
I want to
seems
shoot a
like
blacktail real bad.
it seems like a really cool challenge.
Yeah, I think they're super cool animals too. They're so like beautiful looking, I think.
I was talking to Nathan Endicott. I don't know if you've heard of Wayne Endicott and the Bow Rack or whatever, but it's his son, I believe. And Nathan, I came across his YouTube channel after I think Cam gave him a shout out on his podcast, and Cam Haynes. And just the way that he talked about hunting and stuff like that was amazing. It just was such a public land Midwest kind of mentality, but you saw it placed out in Oregon. And I think he shot like a booner blacktail on some public, which is just insane. And his videos are extremely good. But yeah, I mean, he has this really cool mentality of, just going out there, earning it and grinding and stuff like that. And it's cool to see a person apply it in such a completely different kind of terrain, like just crazy mountains and stuff like that. So, but he's a really nice guy that, man, I would love to go out there sometime and chase that around, or maybe even Alaska. I think would be a really cool place to chase that.
Oh yeah, man. Alaska would be the best. I was going to go out there, well, before we had Huck, and end up couldn't make it. I kind of regret not going, but it is what it is. It was expensive. It was like $5,000 to get out there.
Yeah, it's 30 grand now.
Yeah, I know.
Depends on the
Yeah,
tag.
well, that was just that was all DIY. We were gonna go to Kodiak Island and do it ourselves, but blacktail hunting. But
Wow.
I ended up backing out. I couldn't spend that much money at the time. I was in my 20s, young, and that was a lot of money. That was like all of my money.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta figure out a way to do that. I've wanted to do like a salmon trip to Alaska, so like Steelhead in Alaska is just insane. But honestly, pretty much anything in Alaska is like
It's gonna be a good
extraordinarily
time,
rare
yeah.
and amazing. I mean, imagine. I feel like I wish I could do something where I could just spend a month out there and just leave this world behind
Yeah.
and just go cut my teeth and everything in the outdoors and in the wild there and just get lost in it. But I don't think I'd be able to really come back is the issue.
Yeah, I think there's certain times in Alaska you probably want to come back. Like, I think
True.
in the winter and stuff, it gets pretty, gloom and stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know. You're up in Wisconsin too, so maybe you're used to it.
Yeah, Alaska's built different though, that's for sure. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I'm sure they got multiple feet of ice right now, and I'm looking at someone right now, and it's 54 degrees out, and they're sitting on 6 inches of ice. So
yeah,
we're different, but we're not. I think that level of risky smartness is we're always come home to a warm house. It does not apply necessarily up there. It's a little more
yeah.
wilderness.
Right, right. Um,
Was there
I'll go
any?
out there sometime though. Sure
Yeah,
as the sun will rise, I'll go out there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, just invite me. The most important thing is when you go to Alaska, you have to bring me because
Noted.
you don't have to worry about being faster than me when the bear comes at because I'll be dumb enough to try and fight it. So your ticket out's guaranteed if you give a ticket for me to come with you.
There you go.
Yeah.
I talked to my buddy. He's been out there several times blacktail hunting by himself, and that's what I was talking about on Kodiak Island. It's infested with grizzly bears.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you think about? Like, what do you do? He's like, yeah, you're gonna see them. You're gonna have encounters with them. You got to be okay with it. I'm like, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's hard to grasp. I know you went out to Glacier National Park soon, though probably kind of the areas I'm talking about, but we went on the east side by Many Glacier, me and my girlfriend, and we did a couple backcountry nights, but we mostly camped in like a lot basically that was right off of the park. And
Yeah.
we saw 9 grizzlies and it was really cool. We were never in danger when we saw one. But then we go to the other side of the park and we're about to go trout fishing right off the inflow of Lake McDonald. And we go down there. It's the only time we didn't have our bear spray on us. And it was just we had just got down there and it's usually in my bag and for some reason it wasn't. And then we had a fairly big black bear, just 100 yards of probably 150 yards away, like cross this wide open inflow, like sandbar straight in front of us. And she just about freaked out. I was like, she was tying up and I was looking behind us at where we were going to fish. And I was like, hey, Caitlin, like remain calm, but there's a black bear like right behind you right now. And she's like, haha, that's hilarious. And then I was like, no, really, like just stay still. But there is a black bear like right there. And she freaked out. She's like, Jacob, we have to go now. Like we have to run. I'm like, no, we are not running away from this bear right now. And it just crossed the creek and it was honestly really cool to see. But it's hilarious how like the time that you wouldn't be prepared is the time that it always seems to pop up.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah. You had any other crazy close encounters?
Whenever we were out and like on that vacation you're talking about in Glacier, we had some black bears real close, but man, they get comfortable with people inside that park. It seems like
Yeah.
walking on like some main hiking trails and stuff. We did the first year when we were out in Colorado. We had a black bear that didn't like us being around. Like he was like an oddly aggressive bear. He never really was a nuisance to us or anything, but he was living in the same area we were hunting. We saw him multiple times and he was not afraid of us. Like he was he would like walk towards us sometimes,
Oof.
and I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird encounter with a bear. Usually they're afraid of you, the black bears, but this one was like just oddly confident in what he was doing, and of course I don't. Colorado doesn't have a spring bear season anymore, so maybe they don't get hunted as much. But that's the only bear stuff that I've really had uh, encounters with out in the wild was out there in Colorado, and then the rest of the time we didn't hardly even see a black bear. In fact, that was the only year we saw black bears was the year I did not have a tag, and the rest of the time in Colorado now you can buy if you draw a deer or elk tag, you can just buy a black bear tag for $100.
Oh wow.
So we'd always just buy a black bear tag. But since I had a tag, never saw a black bear.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. When you're not prepared, you see them. When you have a tag, you
Right.
definitely won't. Like you
Yeah.
smell tags is what's really going on, I think.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. And then you can use a rifle too. One year we brought a rifle with us even and never did see one. So we were bound and determined to shoot one, but didn't. But also like every year I went, the pressure got more and more and more until at that final year it was crazy. There was people everywhere. But
yeah. How long ago was that last year for you?
Okay, it was the year before Huck was born, I believe. So probably 2018.
Yeah.
No. 17, 16, 17. Probably 2019.
Okay.
It was like the year Huck was born, I guess.
I gotcha.
And I believe we started going in 16. So it went 16, 17, 18, and 19, 4 years in a row. And I haven't been since.
I've heard it's just got wild out there, like with the pressure and stuff like that. I mean, I can't imagine it's what we face a lot of the time in the Midwest because there's so much land and there's so much going on. I mean, like I scouted an area last night that was just open for public either this last year or the year before, like, this past season or the season before. And I had already found like 4 cut up trees and cameras and stuff on it. And like, it's,
Hey buddy, go. Sorry, Jacob. Go.
oh, no, you're good.
You go by yourself, buddy. You're all right. I don't need to help you. You can do it.
We could have Huck on for a few stories. I'm sure he's got good stories.
He has to pee. That's what he just he feels the need to come. He feels the need to come and tell me every time he has to go.
Oh, I love Huck. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard that. Oh, I was out on this property scouting yesterday, and I found 4 stands and all sorts of cut up trees and stuff that was predates when this property actually became public, and it was county land before it became public land. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna have this sanctuary to myself, and it's already like, I mean, you could tell there's probably like 15 scent wicks out there, some crazy amount like that. It's all every rub that's around. There's some kind of estrus scent wick on, and like those people were the ones that had cut it up because the trees were way more than 2-year-old cut. Were just poaching. So it's like, I can't imagine that. I'm sure, not to say poaching doesn't happen out west, but I can't imagine with that much land that you're having that much density. But at the same time, I feel like as an elk hunter, you do a little bit more damage per acre than the average hunter for deer because you got calling and all sorts of stuff like that. You got a lot more nomadic kind of action going on than you do necessarily as a tree stand hunter.
The Western thing and the amount of hunters out there, I think it's still a problem though, because I think like those trailheads and stuff really concentrate a bunch of people, and a lot of the states are making changes to their regulations for non-residents. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up for debate. But I know, like, I believe Montana doubled their elk tag prices. Colorado's not allowing as many tags. More, I think there's going to be more allocated to residents versus non-residents. So things are changing out there. I don't know. Colorado's kind of a mess anyway. Their governor is a known anti-hunter. So
did you listen to Bo's podcast about?
I have not yet.
You should. It's fantastic. It's puts in a lot of conservation into perspective, and I think that there are some ways that out west they have their heads on a little bit more square than us, and there's some ways that I just am scratching my own head thinking, like, the wolf introduction and all that stuff in Colorado.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think they do a fair job of understanding how sacred it is, like, and understanding how precious like just in general elk are, but just a lot of the game species they have out there. And I wish that we would go more on the offensive as far as acquiring public land and like having actual donation to conservation rather than always reeling and pulling back on things. But everyone is all for promotion of the outdoors, but I think there's going to be some kind of point that we got to say, hey, we're causing a little more harm than good, where we're not going to be able to do this in X amount of years because of the way the populations are trending and stuff like that. So it's good to see
Right.
that movement. As much as it sucks as a hunter, you want to see everyone have the opportunity to hunt and get a tag and experience these things. Some of it's very necessary, which it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean, what we do here, just talking about on a podcast, people can argue that that's not good for hunting, but it's like, but in some ways, it is good,
Mm-hmm.
So it's an internal battle I have all the time. Like you got that Matt Ranella versus Steve Ranella thing going on.
Yeah,
I don't know what the answer is. It's probably some type of a common ground in the middle type thing,
absolutely. They're
because I think some of that stuff's real toxic, but some of them have points too,
Yeah, I think there's a difference between using hunting for monetary gain. As I say this on my first podcast episode, but I think there's a difference between doing that and trying to spread what you love about hunting and spread everyone's ability to enjoy it.
Right.
There's a very specific reason why I'm doing what I do and why this is called the wild calling and not something else. But I can get into that at another time. But yeah, I think there's a big difference between people trying to gain money off of it and people trying to spread it. And I think that when you're trying to teach someone something that they may not have a father or a grandfather to tell them, or your family in general, to show them how to do it, and you're trying to spread the thing that you gain so much joy from, I don't think that's a negative. Despite how many people it may bring to the woods, and how it may be semi-romanticized in a way from it, I think that you can't really blame anyone for trying to spread their passion. And I think people getting involved in it is not the issue. I think the lack of the resource is the real issue, and the lack of the space for them is the issue at that
Yeah.
point.
Right. Yeah, and it's tough. Like I 100% understand both sides of each argument. Like
Yeah.
everybody has points. But also it's like I think a lot of it just is a derivative of like the toxic culture that we've created in the United States right now, to be honest with you. Like
Yeah.
the whole being able to stand behind a computer and say whatever you want without getting punched in the mouth. The whole, you know, what did Joe Rogan mentioned it on that podcast I listened to that he did with Ranella and Cameron Haynes about weak-minded men are the ones that seem to run social media, and that's kind of the opinions like you alluded to earlier that we hear instead of the majority are probably good people that want everybody to do well, but those aren't the loud people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely get that. We could have endless debates on that, and I think that in general, and I know this is a bit of an aside, but in general, I think it's a very good thing that we can discuss it and we can understand both perspectives. It seems like every time there's a black and white answer in society, it's somewhere in the gray area that the real solution lies. And I think it's very important that we don't shut down dialogue about this, whether you agree with it or not, because I think that's what you see happen politically. Someone gets labeled a this or a that, and it shuts down conversation completely, makes it taboo, and then no progress is made. And I think no matter what happens and what area we trend, we've always got to be able to discuss it and realize that, there may be people that are misled in their perspective, on whether that, if they're misled or not is your opinion or not. There may be people that differ from you in opinion, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong. They still fall into this family of hunters and stuff like that. And it's certainly,
Yeah.
I think some of the worst hunters can do a lot less damage than some of the most clever anti-hunters that can find a way to egg us on and give us to pivot against each other. But yeah, that could be argued till the end of time. That's for sure.
Yeah, and when we put ourselves in our own boxes inside of the hunting world, like
Yep.
you're a saddle hunter, you're a lone wolf custom gear person, you're a hunting beast guy, you're this, you're a public land hunter, you're a private land hunter, it's like, shoot, man. And then we're all fighting each other. Whereas I think anti-hunters have more of a common goal and are a little more organized than we are. So,
yeah, I think it's it's detrimental that we just put ourselves in boxes. I mean, it's funny because not to categorize hunters in general, but I believe in general they have a little more conservative views if you look at how the whole 2A argument goes and stuff like that. But a lot of the points that they spend their entire lives refuting and being upset with are those who place each other in boxes and say you're this, you're that, like categorize you as a bigot so you can't talk, you're a misogynist, or all these different things.
right.
And it shuts down that conversation, and it seems like that's exactly what we're doing to each other. And it's really unfortunate, and it's a very easy trap to fall into, sadly.
Oh yeah.
But it's something that, like I said, we just need to be able to talk about it and discuss it, not be at each other's throats about it, and realize that, we have to define a point, I think, as a community in which we need to fight for these things, and what point is too much. And I think that's the hardest part of it. But I don't think until we have control of our own jurisdiction as a group, I don't think we'll be ever be able to reach that, so long as someone else is kind of making the decisions for us. But
Yeah, I mean we've been at this point in the hunting, like in hunting in the past. Like there was a point in time in the U.S. where hunting was all but gone after all the stuff with fur happened, and then the Roosevelt administration came along and changed some things and turned things around. So I don't know, are we going in a big cycle right now or a big circle where eventually something's going to have to give, or else this is all going to go away, and there will be a someone that steps up and turns it around and gets it going back in the other direction. I don't know. We'll see.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we're coming back around. Hopefully we get another Roosevelt administration in there and we acquire some more public land and protect some more freedoms that we have.
Yeah.
Are there
Great.
I think that's a conversation that I'm always welcome to. That I always welcome, whether it's, I know this is Wild Calling Wednesdays and we're going to talk about crazy stuff, but I think that's a conversation that we need to be open to having regardless of topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's no one more that I would rather have it with than you, because I'd say you're the most level-headed guy I know in the industry. I'm very, very open to admitting that, and I really respect your opinion on it too. So, and I don't think you'd ever label me something or be at my throat for anything. I think you'd probably bring up a lot of points that I should listen to more than anything.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But anything else any other crazy stories you want to talk about? I know you've probably been through the ringer every time hunting with Dan. So.
Not really. Not nothing insane. I mean, not outside your typical public land weird things happening, but nothing real crazy that would be shocking to anybody.
Yeah, that's all right, man. We go through it. We go through it all the time, and it's just about putting the wild ones out there for people to get to hear now. But
yeah.
Let's wrap it up then, I guess. Where can people find you, learn about your podcast, all that stuff like that, all the good things you're doing on YouTube?
Yep. Go over to YouTube Before the Echo Hunting. I put something up there on pretty much every day. And then also I'm got a lot of stuff on Instagram too. And that's the same thing, Before the Echo Hunting.
Yeah, you're cranking out those reels quite a bit, I was seeing. It's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of people that try to put out something every day, and it's not like... Sometimes it's just garbage because they're trying to hit a number, but it seems like you make a good point you have great conversations with people all the time on your podcast. And it seems like you're really good at taking an interesting or educational clip from those. And then, every day I kind of get that notification that you're posting something. I make sure I tune into it too. So it's good stuff.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, Josh, I appreciate you hopping on and telling your stories, and I really like that we were able to have a little bit of a conversation about the the way that hunting is seeming to trend, and hopefully that's a good way to start the podcast off with this first episode is reminding each other that we got to be open to these conversations, and we can always get back to our favorite stuff of telling crazy stories, but we got to protect what we really love at the end of the day.
Perfect, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being on here, Josh. Have a good one.
No problem. Have a good one. See you. Bye.